Tonight, what we know about Donald Trump's new running mate as Republicans kick off their convention in Milwaukee.
JD!
From fierce critic to staunch ally.
JD Vance.
The dramatic new video of the shooter moments before the attempted assassination.
The buck stops with me. I am the director of the Secret Service.
Heightened security concerns from Canadian politicians at a meeting of premiers in Halifax.
When you're doing something open air, it does pose a higher risk.
Plus, the former reservist who stormed Rideau Hall granted conditional release. And a spectator crush at the Copa America final.
It was horrible to watch.
A dark moment inside the beautiful game.
CTV National News with Omar Sachedina.
Good evening, everyone. One of Donald Trump's fiercest critics is tonight courting American voters as his official running mate. JD Vance is said to have found out about his selection just 20 minutes before the public announcement in a call from the former president, who late tonight made an unscheduled appearance on day one of the Republican National Convention in Milwaukee, his ear covered by a bandage 2 days after he dodged a would-be assassin's bullet. At 39 years old, if elected in November, Vance would become one of the youngest vice presidents in American history, nearly 4 decades Trump's junior. There was more clarity about Trump's campaign and more details about the attempt on his life over the weekend as new video emerged of the shooter. CTV's Washington Bureau Chief Joey Malbin is at the Republican National Convention tonight and starts us off.
Kicking off the Republican National Convention,
All of its 36 votes for President Trump.
Roll call of the states. Delegates formally crowning Donald Trump as their presidential candidate, celebrating and echoing Trump's defiant cry. This just 2 days after the former president survived an assassination attempt. To the tunes of country music, Trump revealed his running mate, Ohio Senator JD Vance.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
From author of Hillbilly Elegy to the top of the ticket, Vance served in Iraq. He trashed Trump and then embraced him.
You've said I'm a never Trump guy, never liked him. Terrible candidate. Idiot if you voted for him.
Look, I was wrong about Donald Trump. I didn't think he was going to be a good president, Brett. He was a great president.
At 39, now seen as the future of the MAGA movement, Vance could help Trump win in key Rust Belt states, and he's besties with Trump's son, Don Jr.
I think he just helps us in places that we're going to need the help, in Pennsylvania and Wisconsin and Michigan.
With his name already on the campaign plane, President Joe Biden wasn't impressed.
A clone of Trump on the issue, so I don't see any difference.
As Biden ordered an independent review of the Secret Service and apparent failures that allowed Thomas Crooks to get so close to Trump, just 400 feet, 120 meters from the stage, with a direct line of sight on the former president.
Yeah, look, there he is.
This new video shows the 20-year-old crouched on the rooftop, moments before he fired an assault rifle, striking the former president and killing a firefighter, injuring 2 others. Snipers took up positions, but Crooks was outside their security perimeter. Dozens of firearms and explosive material was found at his home, but the big question is why the nursing home employee would want to assassinate the former president.
He was just a bit odd.
Security is extremely tight here in Milwaukee. Homeland Security has already made adjustments to Donald Trump's protection detail. No one here is taking any chances, Omar.
All right, Joy, thank you. The U.S. president sat down for an interview today where he defended his language in the lead up to Saturday's assassination attempt.
You called your opponent an existential threat on a call a week ago. You said it's time to put Trump in the bullseye. There's some dispute about the context, but I think you appreciate
I didn't say crosshairs. I was talking about focus on. Look, the truth of the matter was, what I guess I was talking about at the time was, there was very little focus on Trump's agenda.
Yeah, the term is bullseye.
It was a mistake to use the word. I didn't say crosshairs. I meant bullseye. I meant focus on him. focus on what he's doing, focus on his policies, focus on the number of lies he told in the debate.
And joining us now is CTV's chief political correspondent, Vassy Kapelos, also at the Republican convention in Milwaukee tonight. And Vassy, let's talk a little bit more about Trump's running mate pick. The fact that Vance has been so sharply critical of Trump in the past, but has done this 180, how are delegates reacting to that?
Yeah, Omar, I was super curious after this announcement was made, so I set out to, in the breaks between the hits I was doing, ask as many delegates as possible. I have to tell you, overwhelmingly, they're over it. To put it bluntly, he has acknowledged in their view that he was wrong to hold the view he did in 2016, that his view has evolved since then, and now they view him as one of the most ardent supporters of former President Trump, and they just seem to be saying, look, we know he did something wrong, but we're going to move past that now. He's the guy for us. At least in this room, that was the overwhelming view.
Now, you also had a chance to speak with Canada's ambassador to the United States earlier today. What did Kirsten Hillman tell you about the impact on Canada of a potential Trump-Vance win in November?
Yeah, Omar, she said that she had met with JD Vance, a senator who represents Ohio, of course, which has a pretty large trading relationship with Canada, given its proximate nature to our country. Here's in her own words what she had to say about those meetings and his view of our country.
He's come to a lot of our Canada-U.S. events, and I've chatted with him there. And, I think actually he's somebody who knows Canada well, who's been very important for his state, who is essential to the success economically of his state. And we have already, a bit of a relationship built, so that's good.
Just one word of slight caution, Omar, coming out of that. I have listened to a number of speakers here say that they lost their jobs or they felt the economy was suffering because of NAFTA. They name-dropped NAFTA. So I would maybe, caution against an overwhelming sense of optimism that there's a lot of potential roadblocks ahead with a Trump-Vance ticket for Canada. Omar?
All right, Vassy, thank you. And CTV National News will be live in Milwaukee on Thursday. That is when Donald Trump addresses delegates at the Republican National Convention. The U.S. Justice Department is vowing to appeal after the federal judge overseeing Donald Trump's classified documents trial in Florida dismissed the case.
Special counsel, any comment on the Doc's case being dismissed?
Reporters asking special counsel Jack Smith about the ruling after the Trump-appointed judge sided with the defense's arguments that Smith did not have authority to bring the case. Trump was accused of hoarding secret documents after leaving the White House. Trump issued a statement praising the decision and saying other criminal cases against him should be tossed out as well. Here at home, Canadian politicians are also experiencing increased threats, and some are reassessing their security needs after this weekend's shooting. The issue top of mind as premiers gather for a summit in Halifax. CTV's Judy Trin is there.
At the Premier's summer meeting, protests forced provincial leaders to move their photo session to a rooftop, an example of increasing vigilance.
I have confidence in my security detail, but no matter where you are in the world, and you're a leader, you have to be conscious of your surroundings.
Politicians at every level are weighing what's needed to keep themselves safe, especially after the attempted assassination of Donald Trump.
I think all of us are going to have to do a reflection on what our current security is and whether it's going to be adequate, and I'll have that conversation with my protection unit.
The RCMP has been in contact with U.S. authorities, and the Mounties have briefed the public safety minister about the threat level in Canada. Security experts say outdoor events should be carefully weighed against safer indoor venues.
If you have an enclosed area, it's easier to process people and ensure there are no firearms or any threats are identified at the door. When you're doing something open air, it does pose a higher risk.
Since the COVID pandemic, threats to the Prime Minister, to cabinet ministers, and to other MPs have increased. Opposition leaders now have more protection around them and their families, but say they will not stop talking to the public despite concerns.
We can have politicians who are behind 4 feet of glass, who roll by in motorcades, but never shake hands with a real human being. And then we won't have a democracy.
I'm going to continue to be accessible to the public. I'm going to continue to be in the public. I think it's very important. But we also want to make sure that we're bringing the tensions down.
Public Safety Minister Dominic LeBlanc says he has confidence that CSIS and the RCMP will take all necessary steps to protect Canadian politicians. Judy Trin, CTV News, Halifax.
There are also warnings tonight that Canada isn't immune from the political violence south of the border. CTV's Michael Couture on the deepening divisions in this country and how to repair them.
You are a terrible effing human.
That is a small sample of the emails Liberal MP Pam Damoff has received. The threats, misogyny, and abuse got so bad, she's decided not to run in the next election.
When you're sort of looking over your shoulder all the time when you're out in public, it's just not a healthy way to live.
According to the head of security for the House of Commons, harassment of MPs has spiked 800% in the last 5 years, and it's being felt at all levels of government.
I just think the discourse has really changed and has really deteriorated between the people and the people like me who are serving them.
In the 2021 election campaign, a protester threw rocks at Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. The following year, NDP leader Jagmeet Singh was confronted in Peterborough, and Pierre Poilievre's wife has been the target of sexual threats.
We're talking about actual acts of intimidation and violence.
Former national security analyst Stephanie Carvin has seen a shift in discourse, and she says it ramped up when Donald Trump entered the political arena.
This idea that you can challenge your opponent not by attacking their ideas, but by attacking them and suggesting that, they're not just wrong, but they should in fact be in jail.
Carvin says that thinking starts to legitimize certain types of behaviors. Last month in Ottawa, a man spit on former Public Safety Minister Marco Mendicino. While that was serious, Mendicino says what happened to former U.S. President Donald Trump was horrifying. He wants to see governments and political parties use this as a turning point.
Give police more resources, work with social media to make sure that they are safe platforms and spaces for debate, and finally look at each other and in the mirror and take the temperature down when it comes to our rhetoric.
Mendicino says party leaders in this country need to stop calling each other liars and criminals, warning Canada isn't immune to the political violence seen south of the border. Omar.
All right, Mike, thank you. As we mentioned, Canada's premiers are in Nova Scotia to begin 3 days of meetings to discuss key issues that have at times been the source of continuing friction between the provinces and the feds. CTV's Colton Prale with what's on the agenda.
8 months after Canada's premiers panned federal overreach at a conference in Halifax, they're back, repeating the same message. Provincial and territorial leaders meeting over 3 days, hoping to find new cooperative solutions to a bevy of problems. Healthcare takes top billing. An estimated 6.5 million people don't have a family doctor, and new polling shows nearly 2/3 of Canadians say their premier isn't doing enough to improve the situation. Tomorrow, the Canadian Medical Association and Canadian Nurses Union will address the leaders, pushing for increased access to primary care and better staffing levels through mandatory nurse-to-patient ratios.
I think there are some issues where we could save money and be more efficient nationally with our healthcare system. The challenge that we have is, despite continued requests of the federal government for a sit-down with them to have those conversations, they're refusing to meet with us.
It's not the Premier's only gripe with Ottawa either. Equalization payments are back in the spotlight after Newfoundland launched a constitutional challenge against the federal government, saying it was disadvantaged by the system. It's a feeling echoed by New Brunswick and BC, where Premier David Eby is considering intervenor status in the case. A decision could come by the end of the meetings. And in the background of it all, the carbon tax. Canadians are receiving the newly renamed Canada Carbon Rebate in their bank account today, an effort by the federal government to take a policy opposed by many of these premiers and make it favorable in the eyes of voters. Colton Prale, CTV News, Halifax.
Canada has offered an apology that 9 First Nations in Saskatchewan and Manitoba have waited more than a century to hear.
We are sorry.
The apology stems from a long-term dispute between Canada and the Lakota Nations, who have been historically classified as American refugees, denying them treaty benefits. The government says it will work with the First Nations to affirm their rights under the Constitution. The Manitoba man who stormed Rideau Hall to confront Prime Minister Justin Trudeau 4 years ago has been released from prison. An armed Corey Huron rammed his truck into the gates of the hall on July 2nd, 2020. He then took off on foot toward Rideau Cottage, where Trudeau and his family were living. The Prime Minister was not home at the time of the attack. Huron served 2/3 of his 6-year sentence. He was previously granted day parole in 2022. Some relief for residents of Labrador City forced out of their homes by wildfires. 2 fires are still burning near the town. A one-time payment of $1,000 will be available to households if their primary residence is under an evacuation order. To access the money, residents need to register with the Red Cross before the end of the month. Coming up, the critical countdown for a possible return to normal in Calgary. Plus, the terrifying moments at the Copa America final. Calgary's mayor is warning the next 3 days are critical to see whether outdoor water restrictions will be lifted after a water main burst. And as CTV's Kathy Lee reports, frustration is mounting.
A second pump opened Monday at the Bears Paw Water Treatment Plant. Water now at 70% flow rate through the repaired feeder main that burst last month.
The next 72 hours are critical to understand how the pipe is responding to speed of flow.
If the pipe responds well, Stage 3 outdoor water restrictions move to Stage 2 Thursday, meaning Calgarians can use a sprinkler up to an hour per week.
Our sprinkler system has been off the whole time, and so it's pretty brown.
And some businesses can start to recover.
My family, all of my guys' families depend on this business, and when it's shut down to the extent that it is, it makes it very difficult.
Getting the pipeline back to 100% has also been difficult. The city moving forward cautiously after 3 wires around it snapped last week. Crews ready if there are more problems.
We have materials available, contractors on standby, and we can rapidly respond to any situation that comes up.
The larger situation almost at 6 weeks. Some caught off guard with the long timeline.
What I find somewhat disturbing is that they weren't prepared for something like this and had no idea that it was going to happen.
We're dealing with a lot of old infrastructure here, and maybe there was a bit of naiveness around how long it was actually going to last.
The mayor calling for a comprehensive review and
we need a national push to ensure that funding is available to fix and replace vital infrastructure before we see any more catastrophic failures.
We have an infrastructure deficit that's massive in Canada. It's estimated anywhere from $150 billion to $250 billion.
If outdoor water restrictions move to Stage 2 on Thursday and things continue to go well, the restrictions can move to Stage 1 on July 22nd, which allows sprinklers to run up to 2 hours per week. Kathy Lee, CTV News, Calgary.
Still ahead. The RCMP make a major bust in the most unlikely of places. A major move in the North American steel market today. American company Cleveland Cliffs is set to buy its Canadian rival Stelco. The deal is worth $3.4 billion or $70 per share. Stelco's CEO says the company will keep its headquarters in Hamilton, Ontario, and maintain employment levels. The deal subject to a shareholders vote this fall. Grocery stores in Ontario will be allowed to stock ready-to-drink cocktails from Thursday as the government accelerates a plan to expand alcohol sales in the province 2 weeks earlier than planned. Liquor store workers protesting the changes are preparing for a strike on the 12th day. Today, picketing LCBO warehouses, stopping trucks from making deliveries.
This is where restaurants and bars get provided. Right now, we're on the side of the road preventing trucks from coming in and trucks from going out.
Many hospitality venues are running low on stock, and their supply issues are likely to persist. Plans to reopen some LCBO stores again this week have been abandoned. A tip from U.S. Homeland Security led Quebec RCMP to a musical instrument and a major drug bust. Mountie seizing 63 kilos of cocaine hidden inside a grand piano. They also uncovered $10,000 in cash. 4 people have been arrested. They're expected in court later this week. We're now just 11 days out from the start of the Paris Olympics, and today the torch traveled through the host city on the final leg of its journey. Crowds gathered to watch athletes carry the flame past the Eiffel Tower and the Arc de Triomphe. It was even taken for a spin at the Moulin Rouge. The relay will culminate with the lighting of the Olympic cauldron at the opening ceremony next week. After the break, chaos at Copa America.
We've had some pretty horrendous experiences of this kind of stuff, and I just had this knot in my stomach, essentially, that a disaster was going to happen. It had gone from a bit of disorder to potentially a tragedy.
Fans stormed the stadium before the final match. Mayhem at the Copa America final left soccer fans scared and outraged. Unruly spectators without tickets tried sneaking into the stadium, causing a delay of nearly 90 minutes and a rocky start. CTV's Garrett Barry on the near disaster that overshadowed the spectacle of the game.
Chaos at the Copa America as massive crowds fueled by heat, confusion, overpower security lines. Before the championship match, hundreds seemed to have broken through the gates, in one case climbing through ventilation systems. Authorities shut down the gates, but that only created a crush of pressure that had to be released, forcing officials to open the doors to just about anybody.
Yeah, it was really distressing, actually. It was horrible to watch.
To British writer Jack Lang, who watched it all play out, it's reminiscent of some of England's biggest soccer disasters, the Stampede at Hillsborough in 1989 that claimed 97 lives.
We've had some pretty horrendous experiences of this kind of stuff, and I just had this knot in my stomach, essentially, that a disaster was going to happen. It had gone from a bit of disorder to potentially a tragedy, I think.
27 people were arrested, including the president of Columbia Soccer Association. It all brings into question the 2026 World Cup plans. This Miami stadium is set to host 7 World Cup games in 2026. Today, a spokesperson said even with some 800 police present, stadium staff will review what went wrong and try to fix it. It all seems to have overshadowed the match itself. It's the top tournament in South American soccer, and this year, North American teams joined the mix. An important tune-up for Canada, who beat expectations and finished 4th ahead of the 2026 World Cup that they automatically qualify for.
The response of the team, the performances of the team, certainly the success that we've had in the tournament is we've laid an incredible foundation for what the future of this team is going to be.
A preview for these players of the bright lights and superstars that will hit Canadian fields when the 2026 World Cup comes to Toronto and Vancouver. Garrett Barry, CTV News, St. John's.
And that's a snapshot of this Monday. For all of us at CTV National News, thank you for watching. Good night, and see you tomorrow.
CTV National News, Canada's #1 newscast.